Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Katherine Troche, one of the co-founders of Empire Space. We are a nonprofit focused on growing the New York space ecosystem and making New York a larger part of the story of the 21st century space age. Tonight, we are thrilled to begin our Rocketside Chat series, where we are going to be having relaxed and informative conversations with interesting folks we have met along the way here in New York, doing great things in space. We hope to offer a wide range of perspectives and backgrounds to kind of share with you all what amazing things are happening here in the state, in space. Tonight, we are very excited to be joined by NASA Solar System Ambassador and amateur astronomer extraordinaire, Katherine Troche. She was one of our first friends here at Empire Space, so we thought it would be very fitting to start this series with her. So hello, Kat.
Hi, Patrick. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I guess start us off with a little bit about your background, how you got into space, and then how you got so involved in the space scene here in New York.
So I think as a kid, what kid doesn't dream about going to space, right? At some point in your life, you always want to be maybe a doctor or a firefighter, an astronaut, a mermaid, So I had a variety of things to choose from. And as a kid, I loved the moon. I loved the stars and everything that came with it, and just space exploration. I remember as a kid, one of my heroes was Mae Jemison. Just like I wanted to be her, like just going into space. And as I got older, I wouldn't say that I lost that love, but you grow up, life kind of gets in the way. Soon, you've got a job and you're, paying bills, and things kind of just get pushed to the back burner. And then how I ultimately ended up getting involved in amateur astronomy and sidewalk astronomy was I was looking for an outlet between work and home. I only had these two things and nothing else, and I needed a hobby. I needed something else to do. And I happened to be wandering through Central Park one day, and I ran into a bunch of folks setting up telescopes in Sheep Meadow, and it turned out to be the Amateur Astronomers Association for their annual Autumn Starfest star party. And so I stuck around, and it was one of the coolest things I had ever seen in New York City happening to date. And I even got to operate one of the telescopes that night. And these are people that I did not know. They just met me and I just met them. And the fact that they trusted me with their equipment, and, I guess they saw, that I was just that interested and I wanted to learn and I wanted to, get involved, and ultimately I ended up joining their club, and I've been a member for the last 10 years.
That's an amazing story. I can relate a lot to it because my journey was similar. Fascinated as a kid, telescope when I was younger. My younger brother and sister, I'm sure they hate me for all those cold nights that my dad and I would go out to some field somewhere because we wanted to look at Orion or something, and they would just be there in coats in the car before the age of smartphones, but also that kind of boomerang that, life, career choices, other things, such a small percentage of the people who are interested in space actually are able to go into careers in space. So drifted away, and then over time, tried to stay engaged. Then the COVID lull opened up unwillingly this huge space in my life at home to research and re-engage. And I think it's important to share those stories so people can realize that they have a role or an ability to get involved in space outside of just the professionals. It's not just for the NASA pros. So I guess tell us a little bit more about AAA, like what you guys do in the city. I know you guys have a lot of events, so give us kind of their backstory, when they got founded, what they've done over the years, and then some of the exciting things that I know you guys have in the works.
Sure. So the AAA is the Amateur Astronomers Association. We are a 501c3 nonprofit based out of New York State. And the entire goal is to educate the public in astronomy. We do this through various ways. We have sidewalk astronomy. We have star parties in Central Park and Evergreen Cemetery in Brooklyn. We also have classes. We have lectures that are free. We do out of town trips with some of our members to go to dark sky sites like North South Lake. If anybody has ever visited New York City, or if you live in New York City, you already know you see about 17 stars in the night sky, and that's about it. Meanwhile, there are billions. But the key goal is to bring this astronomy knowledge to the general public. We want to educate folks and let them know that you can see things in New York City. It's not impossible. It's just challenging because of the light pollution. You're able to see Jupiter, you're able to see Saturn. Obviously, you can see the moon. You are able to get double stars like Albireo. You're able to see clusters of stars, whether they're large or small. You can even see the Orion Nebula from New York City with no equipment. You can see that naked eye as well. You just have to know where to look. And so in terms of the major programs or the major updates we have going on, we are building the first free public observatory in the Bronx. Thank you. It has been a little bit of a labor of love. The donated dome was given to us by Nassau Community College. They are actually updating their space. And so they have had this dome for over 40 years. And it's a perfectly good dome. There's nothing wrong with it. And they wanted to give it to someone who would put it to good use. Some of their folks reached out to some of our folks, and we said, we'll take it. At the time, we had no place to put it, but we said, we'll take it. And so they were able to hang on to it for almost a year. And ultimately, we shopped it around to a few locations. We spoke with Floyd Bennett Field in Brooklyn. Unfortunately, they were unable to take it. We spoke with Shirley Chisholm Park in Brooklyn. They were also unable to take it. You know, everyone had various reasons for why they weren't able to host the dome. Ultimately, we contacted Bronx Science High School, and we asked them, hey, you know, we know you have a very active astronomy club. A lot of their students come to our events for extra credit with classes or just because they're interested. And so we know you have a very active astronomy club. We know that the kids are super involved. The science teacher that hosts the astronomy club, shout out to Mr. Neil Farley. He, you know, he's a very engaged educator. And so I spoke with him and said, you know, we know you have some space, you know, around the school. Would you be interested in us maybe setting up the dome for you, and the kids can use it during the day for school? They can use it for solar projects, and you can also have schools come in to visit your school to visit the dome. And so the long story short of that is, while they couldn't put it on school property, we were connected with New York City Parks Department, and we were given a small piece of land to work with at the Jerome Reservoir. So now the dome is going to be at Jerome Park, right between Bronx Science High School and Lehman College. Lehman College also has astronomy programs. So we have a donated dome, we have a donated telescope. And as soon as we get everything set up with the land, because now we're talking with a structural architect, oh, excuse me, let me start that over. As soon as we get everything sorted with the land, we are speaking with a landscape architect. And once they give us the green light and we build the platform that the dome needs to sit on, everything is going to move rapid pace because we already have all the things we need. So hopefully first light will be late fall, early winter of 2022, 2023.
That is amazing. That is incredibly exciting. Cheers, all the props for pulling that together. When I first saw that fact that the city had never had I found that baffling. Even thinking especially back to the foundation of the city in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s with some of the universities, I was stunned to learn that none of them had ever had a public observatory.
It is absolutely nuts to me. This is a city that has literally everything you can think of. I remember seeing the Pop-Tarts like pop-up store. We have, just, anything that you can think of, we have here in New York City, but we don't have an observatory. Or a public observatory, rather, I should say, because there are observatories, associated with schools, but typically you need to be a student to gain access. And, that's great for, the less than a half of a 1%, of New York City residents, but that doesn't serve the entire 5 boroughs.
So many different things there that I wanted to follow up on. First, I think it's important to acknowledge the collaboration between different institutions, between different regions of the state. That is exactly what we love to see. Building on that, amplifying that, finding new ways to kind of repeat that success around the state. I think is important for growing, a healthy ecosystem where companies and other organizations can thrive here. I wanted to ask, what is, in your experience, been the way to kind of best defeat that skepticism that I know most New Yorkers would say at stargazing from the city? Has it been the passerby who just happens to express interest and they're captured by being there in the moment? Is it people who come in through another organization, a school, or a science club or something that get kind of recommended, and that's how you find new people? What are the successful avenues for kind of puncturing that skepticism?
100% the passerby. If I have my telescope set up on the sidewalk, so I, for folks at home, I live in Queens, very, very busy borough. It is the most ethnically diverse place on the planet. And there's something about, it doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter about your economic background, your educational background. If you see a random woman set up on the sidewalk with a telescope, just looking at the moon, you're gonna take a look. You're gonna have that double take of, what are you doing here? And
that sticks out even on the New York City sidewalks.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. For as New Yorkers, we don't, we just kind of keep it moving. We have places to be, but there's something about seeing somebody set up a telescope outside in a very light polluted area that makes you stop and go, what? And then maybe you get someone who approaches you first and they say, what are you doing? Or what are you looking at? Or maybe they think it's a camera, and then you can explain to them, it's a telescope. Would you like to take a look? I'm looking at, whatever the object of the evening is. Sometimes you get folks that are a little too skeptical, and then I'll see them look at me and say, would you like to take a look at the moon, for example? Would you like to see the craters up close? Would you like to see the rings of Saturn up close? No one has ever said no to me for the rings of Saturn. I can promise you. I have had a 100% success rate over the last 10 years for Saturn.
So Saturn is the big draw.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. What it is? It's absolutely gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, totally. But you know what it is that I think Saturn it's like the moon. It's identifiable. So if you're showing someone Jupiter, and I've had this happen, if you're showing somebody Jupiter, they'll see it and they'll say, oh, okay. You're able to see the bands. Sometimes on a really nice night, you're able to see the red spot. And they'll say, oh, okay, that's cool. You show somebody Saturn, they never forget that, ever. That is something that they will take away for the rest of their lives. It's incredible. So and that feeling of giving that to someone, maybe they've had a rough day, maybe they've had a rough month.
Yeah.
Just that moment of them going, wow, this is so cool. Can I take a picture? Sure. Take it with you. Absolutely. This is for everyone.
No, and I think that's such a beautiful sentiment. It's one of the reasons that I love space so much is, and I mean, I grew up on the Star Trek novels, so that kind of sort of had that utopian vision for kind of like, oh, things happen in the interim, and then in 300 years, everything is awesome. So I understand the world that Star Trek kind of projects, but I've always loved space for its positivity, for its ability to unite people, for its ability to be universal and opening. So many of the human problems that I spend my time studying, my background in politics and government, they just completely fall by the wayside when you take on this kind of cosmic perspective. It's something very fundamental, something very basic, and something that can't be taken away. It's like an idea. Like it's impossible for, once that experience has happened, it's there. Like it's like an imprint on the genes. And I think that speaks to kind of the power that space has. And I think we need more of that in the world today more than ever. That kind of
absolutely, that
positivity, that universality. And space to me is always optimistic in a sense, because it almost always makes you think about the future, or just the possibility or the potential, or those kind of like deep questions. It's impossible not to feel, at least for me. I know some people are kind of terrified of the immensity of space. But I think having those kind of real moments, like you're able to show people on the street kind of randomly in their day-to-day lives, that experience of Saturn, I think even for those people would make that a little bit less frightening. So I guess thank you for building that, and hopefully over time the core of sidewalk astronomers in the city expands. I did want to touch on something that you kind of brought up in one of the previous conversations about access, and just from your experience in the city, this diverse melting pot. How do I know it's going to sound like a big question, but how do we make space more accessible? It's not known historically for being the most accessible. Whether you look at any metric, gender, race, socioeconomic status, it's just not known for being. It can be kind of cliquey. In a bunch of different ways. So in your experience, how can we go about kind of chipping away at some of that? And do you think New York is kind of positioned to do that?
I think so. I think we're doing it now. Just by having this conversation, by opening this dialogue, we're doing it right now. For my field, working with outreach programs like AAA and Empire Space, NASA Solar System Ambassadors, we're creating what Dr. Cyan Proctor wants, that just, equitable, diverse, and inclusive space for everyone, just by making astronomy accessible from the street. And it doesn't have to be in one of the nice neighborhoods in Manhattan, or one of the not so nice neighborhoods in Manhattan, or wherever you are in the 5 boroughs. By evening out the playing field, making things equitable, we are bridging that gap slowly, little by little, between that cliquey, where it's just out of reach, and maybe for some folks it's just, they feel like it's not attainable. Giving it to them at that level helps them think, yeah, absolutely, I can do this. I can be the next Carl Sagan. I can be the next Dr. Cyan Proctor. I can be the next Neil deGrasse Tyson. It doesn't matter that maybe I don't have the background for it. I don't have the pedigree for it like some folks maybe do with legacy. None of that matters. When you're bringing it here, when you're bringing it to them straight on the sidewalk, we're all the same.
That's a beautiful answer. And it kind of ties me into my next question. You now have, you had a platform as a NASA Solar System Ambassador. You are now part of NASA Social. And I know you
that was so much fun. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. I can't lie. I was so jealous of you when I saw you down there in those rooms. So I guess before I just completely fanboy out, tell us a little bit about being a NASA ambassador, how you got involved with that, the program there, so people can become more familiar with it. Because I know you have a lot of other counterparts around the state. You're not the only NASA Solar System Ambassador in New York, and then kind of specifically NASA Social, and then at the end we can kind of geek out about Webb.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So the NASA Solar System Ambassador Program was started in 1997, and it was another way of bringing space, not just astronomy, but space outreach to the general public. So whereas we have, NASA employees have their platforms, what they do, they're able to work on missions and programs. They have us, the NASA Solar System Ambassadors, that are able to reach people on a more public level with libraries, schools, museums, sidewalk astronomy, things of that nature. So I believe there are about 1,100 NASA Solar System Ambassadors now, and we are spread out all throughout the United States and US territories. And you really only need to be the age of 18 to apply. You need to either be a US citizen or have a green card, and you just need to have a love for space and communicating that with people. Applications open September 1st until September 30th. So that's something for a lot of people to keep in mind. If you really are thinking about it, I would at the very least take a look at the application. And if you want to apply, go for it. Do not get discouraged if you do not get in on your first go. I did not get in on my first go. I actually got in on my second time applying. And I have been a solar system ambassador for the last 5 years. And it's been phenomenal. We are able to give these talks and, lectures and, just present to people. But now we have kind of that backing of, and that trust of NASA to spread education and talk about different programs like the Artemis program coming up, JWST that is giving us all these amazing images. And then down the line, anything else that they come out with, Roman Space Telescope, Dragonfly mission to Titan, you name it. So there are going to be so many things that we are able to give to the public and just talk about with the public. And it's just another avenue to create accessibility.
So that's amazing. So how long tell us about like that trip, like for the Webb release. Like tell us about I paint a picture so I can feel like I was
sure.
there. You're the first person I've talked to who was like there live for it.
Absolutely. So NASA Social is a program that they've had since 2013. It used to be the NASA Tweet Up, and it was for folks that were really active on Twitter. And they've since branched out to other social media avenues, Instagram, Facebook, and all that. And it really is for anybody that is active on social media that talks about space education, or just has a large platform where it's mostly education based, not necessarily space based, right? So you don't really have to be involved in STEM to apply for the NASA Social. So yeah, it's surprising, right? I actually, when I was down there, I met a few folks from the social justice sector with NAACP, some folks that are just some folks that are astrophotographers by trade, that's just what they do, and that's what they do for a living. Other folks that do work in the space industry with aerospace. So there are folks from many different walks of life that are able to apply for the program. And if you're selected, they will send you a whole itinerary, an entire list of, what to expect when you get down there. I sat on the application for about 3 days when it opened up on June 1st. And I said to myself, oh, I don't know, maybe I'll apply, maybe I won't. And then as I'm thinking about, oh, will I, won't I, I'm already filling out the application and hitting submit. And so, I ended up getting accepted. And, I scared the daylights out of my spouse because I screamed like bloody murder that I was just that excited. And then after I got everything in order, I took the trip down to Maryland. And that night before the trip to Maryland, we found out that the White House was going to release the S-Max photo, the deep field photo. Yeah. And I said, okay, am I still going? And so is that still happening? But I mean, that was a really brief photo release. And when we finally had, the day of for first light images, that's when they were able to get into the nitty gritty of the chemical composition behind these galaxies that they're seeing 13 billion light years. The light is just that old. Unbelievable. And I don't know if you've been following along, and I really hope everyone is still following along, but James Webb, the telescope set a record and then broke its own record in the span of about 5 days, which is incredible.
It's such a powerful, and for me, it's almost like the finale of like Game of Thrones on steroids. Like the build up for this mission has been almost my entire life since I came of age as a space fan right when Hubble went up. Like I have vague memories of when the issue with the mirror And
Yeah,
then my
me
kind of
too.
childhood, when I was becoming an astronomy fan, when I was reading Star Trek, when I had my subscription to Astronomy magazine, that's when kind of Hubble was in its prime, kind of shattering the universe in the 90s. And then
Hmm.
they started talking about, what I was in, middle or high school, and just the buildup over like 2 decades of waiting for this incredibly complicated. And I love how much it's been able to kind of penetrate into the general public. I got a call from my mother the other day, who's
Oh,
only interested in
100%.
space because I have talked about it my entire life. But the school like, oh, are you watching Nova right now? Like, there's this awesome special about all these great pictures from Webb. It's so cool, and just how it was able to kind of penetrate the consciousness, like amid everything that goes on in the world.
100%. And moms are the best, because my mom called
Really.
me after the damage to the mirror was reported again, and they talked a little bit more in depth about like, oh, it's
My
actually a
boss
lot
asked me at
more
work.
damage than they earlier reported. My mom sends me a text and she goes, hey, that telescope you like so much just got hit with a big rock. I was like, excuse me, what? It's not the first thing you want to see in the morning, especially coming back from NASA Social. But so the process for that, it was you just apply it. There's an application process right now for Artemis to see the Artemis launch at the end of August.
Gotcha.
And you
That's another
would
big one.
go. Oh yeah. So that you would go to nasa.gov and you would look for the NASA Social, you would fill out the application, and then you just wait to see if you get called. And so if you are selected, of course, you have to meet them where they are. So in this case, you would be going down to Kennedy. And as long as the weather is good, we'll be launching at the end of August. But if it does get scrubbed, we have those September dates as well. So you do have to set that whole block of time. Whereas with the JWSC images, we already knew these images were coming out. So there was really no delay to be had. But it was phenomenal. And honestly, if anybody wants to apply for any other future NASA socials, I 100% recommend it, because I had such a blast with the NASA team taking the tours of Space Telescope Science Institute. That was phenomenal. Taking the tour of Goddard to go to visit the clean room where they put Webb together, to see where they did all the testing with the centrifuge and the acoustic chamber, knowing that the Roman Space Telescope was undergoing all of these tests at the exact same time where I was standing.
Oh, cool.
Is just mind-blowing to me. And so I would, 100%, 10 out of 10, definitely recommend. Nothing beats it. It was just so much fun.
Okay. I'm still very jealous. Like, that hasn't faded. That probably won't fade for a while. That's a fantastic experience. Thank you for sharing all of those details. As we get ready to wrap up, tell the people where they can find you. Your handle, if you have a website, anything else you want people to visit, and then the website for AAA.
Sure. So AAA is easy. It's AAA.org. So not .com like the automobile, .org like the organization. You can find us pretty much on, at any of your local street corners. Just visit aa.org and click on the calendar section, and you'll be able to pull up an entire list of events from now all the way into November. And then starting in November, we will have our lecture series, which is free, and you can attend that as well until the spring when we start observing again. As for me, I am at kuipercat.org. You can also find me on every social media platform at kuipercat as well. And if I am not outside doing astronomy in public, I am doing it virtually. So one of the things that came out of COVID was I couldn't set up my telescope and have people, passerbys, look through the telescope like I normally would. And so I decided to start live streaming sessions, and I do that regularly now on Instagram and on TikTok.
Amazing. Thank you. So I guess final thoughts, anything about the future, any exciting programs that you want to highlight? I know Autumn Starfest is coming up again. And just, kind of where you see the future of space in New York.
Well, I think my club and other astronomy clubs in New York State, we've got it pretty covered with astronomy. But for folks that may not know this, the lunar module was built right in Bethpage, New York, right in Long Island. And it wouldn't be terrible if the folks from the Artemis program decide to give that a second thought and bring it on back to Bethpage, or, maybe upstate New York, or, wherever they decide. But wouldn't be so bad to take it back to New York State.
We could not agree more with that assessment. We know there's lots of great astronomy going on in the state, from the sidewalk astronomy you have down in the city. The North Country has some of the darkest skies east of the Mississippi River in the continental United States. So there's lots of great ways to observe, but in terms of a full space economy with job growth, with academic programs feeding into the kind of new era that I think we all kind of know is coming, going back to the moon, going out to the asteroids, development in low Earth orbit is going to be transformational, I think, for the future of human civilization. Kind of positioning New York to be part of that would be fantastic. So I just want to say thank you very much for sharing your time with us tonight.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure chatting with you, as always. It's been great getting to know you and the work that you do over the last year and a half. Thank you for all you do for space and astronomy in New York City. Again, thanks a lot, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you so much. In the meantime, keep looking up.
You the same. Bye-bye.
Take care.